about this nominee. Americans across the country in red states and blue states have been flooding our offices with phone calls and emails asking the Senate to vote no on Betsy DeVos. Local newspaper editorial boards, many of them that endorse Trump, are saying the same thing. My friends, the senators from Maine and Alaska, were profiles in courage last week when they announced their opposition to her nomination. But unfortunately, so far, they are the exception. We need just one more vote, and we can get a lot better Secretary of Education than the one who was nominated. I ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to follow the courageous example of the senators from Maine and Alaska. We have an obligation as senators, not as Republicans, not as Democrats, but as senators, to evaluate these nominees and their fitness for office, because these nominees are going to wield immense power over the lives of Americans for the next 4 years. I ask my Republican colleagues to look into their conscience and cast their votes tomorrow, not based on party loyalty, but based on whether or not Ms. DeVos is qualified to be our nation's leader on education policy. If one doesn't measure up, the Senate has a responsibility to reject the nomination. I realize it rarely occurs, but this should be an exception because she is so uniquely unqualified, whether it comes to competence, whether it comes to philosophy against the public schools, or whether it comes to conflicts of interest, which still exist in far too many instances with Ms. DeVos's holdings. Second, Madam President, the President's executive order on immigration and refugees is so poorly constructed, so haphazardly implemented, so legally and constitutionally dubious, and so wrong in terms of
agenda. We expect the Commission should effectively follow up and review
silent. It's time for that silence to end, and for Republicans to step up to the plate and start backing up their words with actions. On Friday, the order was temporarily blocked by a federal judge, Judge Robart. On Saturday, the President questioned his credibility via tweet and then asked the country to blame any potential attacks on the country on the judge and the courts. He is not a so-called judge, as the President treated, but rather a Senate-confirmed Bush appointee. Now, Madam President, that's not how we do things here in America. There's a separation of powers for a reason. An independent judiciary is absolutely necessary to ensure presidents and Congresses do not break the law or impinge on the Constitution. But this president has shown a certain callousness when it comes to judges who rule against his whim. Judge Curiel during the campaign, Judge Robart now. Instead of attacking the judge, the president should be working with Congress to tighten up security where it's actually needed. The president has said, well, if there are attacks, the judge will be to blame. I remind him, not one attack on U.S. soil has been perpetrated by a refugee from one of the 7 countries in the executive order. This order doesn't make us any safer. If anything, the executive order increases the risk of lone wolf attacks, our greatest threat. That's what happened in San Bernardino. That's what happened in Orlando. And no authority less than Senator John McCain has said exactly that it will increase the likelihood of attacks by these lone wolves, these disaffected people who are egged on by the evil ISIS. So, I make this offer to my friends on the other side of the aisle. Join Democrats in rescinding the executive order, and we will work with you in a bipartisan way, in good faith, to actually make our country safer. Close up that visa waiver program. where people from countries, just because they're generally friendly to us, those countries are not checked. We know that places like France and Belgium have homegrown terrorists lured by ISIS. They can get on a plane and come here far more easily than a refugee from those 7 countries. Let's tighten that up. But instead, the president picked this executive order. Lord knows how he came to it. And every expert on terrorism will say there are a lot more important things and better things that we need to do. So let me repeat, the stakes are too high for party loyalty to stand in the way of doing what's right to protect this country. We ought to scrap the order and start over. The order not only does not protect us from terrorism, but make it worse, but it stands in the face of what America is all about, a country that has welcomed immigrants, as the beautiful lady with the torch in the harbor, in the city in which I live, has beckoned us for generations. Finally, Mr. President, I ask my Republican colleagues to put country over party when it comes to Russia. This administration has shown a disquieting reluctance to criticize Russia when it flouts international norms and laws. The administration seems hesitant to enforce new sanctions and has even hinted at relaxing existing sanctions on what has always been probably our most formidable enemy along with ISIS, Russia and Putin. Unbelievably, just yesterday, the president insinuated that the American and Russian governments were somehow morally equivalent. When asked about Putin's authoritarian regime by Bill O'Reilly, President Trump responded, "There are a lot of killers. You think our country's so innocent?" Can you imagine if a Democrat had said that? Every one of these seats would be filled with people decrying that kind of moral equivalence. Russia, a dictatorship where Putin kills his enemies, imprisons the press, and causes trouble anywhere he can in the world, morally equivalent to this great land? Come on, where are you? You know if a Democrat said it, you'd be just howling at the moon. Rightfully so. And here, I don't hear much. Mr. President, Vladimir Putin has little or no respect for the diversity of his people, for the freedom of religion and expression, for a free press, for free and fair elections in Russia and in America, it seems. And he has demonstrated on more than one occasion he'll go to any length to silence political dissidents, including murdering them. Does that sound like America? I would ask President Trump. Maybe in the President Trump's mind it does, but it sure doesn't to just about every American. It's not the America that this body represents. My Republican colleagues, as I said, ought to be aghast. I don't think anyone from the other side would associate himself or herself with those comments. I am encouraged that the Republican leader and other Senate Republicans criticized the president for these dangerous remarks. But what worries me most is the policy. Russia is a persistent and strategic threat to this nation. Will this administration cozy up to Putin and his oligarchs and relax sanctions? Will they look the other way when Russia supports separatists in Ukraine and commits human rights violations in Syria alongside Iran, Hezbollah, and the Assad regime? Putin is the kind of bully where if you give him an inch, he takes 10 miles. We all have come across people like that. President Trump's rhetoric is ceding more of the battle space to our enemy each day. So what we must do in this body is ensure that current sanctions stay in place and are robustly enforced. We also need to increase sanctions on Russia for its interference in our election. We ask our colleagues, step up to the plate, do what you know is right, and join us in making sure that the president cannot unilaterally reduce sanctions and that we strengthen sanctions for what he has tried to do in our election. Madam President, the stakes are too high to let loyalty to this president, any president, stop this body from doing the right thing for the American people. On the cabinet, and particularly Ms. DeVos, on the executive order and the lack of respect for an independent judiciary, and on Russia, I ask my Republican colleagues once again to consider principle over party and their duty to country before deference to the president. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Washington.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, over the last few weeks, people across the country have continued to make their voices heard in opposition to the nomination of Betsy DeVos. Moms and dads, grandmothers and grandfathers, students, young and old, in cities and towns, in urban, suburban, and rural communities. People are standing up and they will not be silenced. Thousands upon thousands have joined protests in their communities. Hundreds of thousands have emailed or called their senators, jamming our phone lines, swamping the voicemail system, and shattering records. Millions have engaged on social media, sharing information with their friends and signing petitions and pressuring their elected officials.
Educators. These social achievements that my country has achieved, they're not just a product of social policies.
Announced their opposition as well. And I can tell you, I know for a fact there are other Republicans who are feeling the heat and could come around. So, Madam President, this nomination is dead even right now. On the razor's edge, 50 senators, Democrats and Republicans, will vote to reject Betsy DeVos. And we need just one more Republican wonder why to join us and so many to stand on the side of across the country. We're so focused on this nomination in this moment. Now, President Trump has done so much in these first few weeks, and so many of the people he has nominated to run critical agencies have not been people I can support. But what Democrats will hold the floor for the next 24 hours until the final vote to do everything we can to persuade just one more Republican to join us. And I strongly encourage people across the country to join us. Double down on your advocacy. Keep making your voices heard for these last 24 hours. Madam President, over the past few weeks, I've heard a number of Republicans wonder why Democrats and so many parents and teachers across the country were so focused on this nomination in this moment. Now, President Trump has done so much in these first few weeks, and so many of the people he has nominated to run critical agencies have not been people I can support. But what is it about Betsy DeVos that has inspired so much grassroots energy and opposition across this country? Well, Madam President, I think I understand. It's pretty clear to me. I think it's that for the vast majority of people across the country, public education isn't just another issue. It's different. For those of us who owe everything we have to the strong public education we received, for those who saw our children and grandchildren move through our public schools, for those of us who walked into a public classroom ourselves to teach, or have friends or family who've dedicated their lives to teaching, for those of us who see the role strong public schools play in our communities, especially our rural communities, often offering an educational and a community resource where it simply wouldn't otherwise be offered. We believe that a commitment to strong public schools is part of America's core. The idea that every student in every community should have the opportunities that strong public schools offer. This is a notion that is embedded in our values. It's who we are. It's in our blood. So, Madam President, for those people across the country who feel that way, who believe those things, the nomination of Betsy DeVos truly hits close to home. It was a slap in the face because she doesn't approach this the way most of us do. She doesn't cherish public education. She doesn't value it. She is someone who has dedicated her career and her inherited fortune to privatizing public schools, to tearing down public education, to defunding it in order to push more taxpayer dollars into private schools and for-profit charters. She has called public education, quote, a dead end. From where she sits, from a distance, she has called it, quote, an embarrassment. She has disparaged those who work in our public schools, saying that our best and our brightest, quote, steer clear. She has said education is, quote, an industry. An industry? Well, for someone like her, a billionaire right-wing activist who spent her career and her inherited fortune buying and selling companies, she just doesn't understand a, quote, industry that isn't focused on profits and that doesn't exist in the free market. So, Madam President, when people across the country hear someone like Betsy DeVos say these things about public education, when they hear a right-wing conservative billionaire more focused on her anti-government ideology than on helping our students, when they see that someone who has spent her career trying to destroy public schools has been nominated to lead the federal agency dedicated to public education, well, they start to pay some attention. And Madam President, when they see that person in a Senate hearing so clearly lack any understanding of the issues, when they see her unable to explain basic concepts in education policy, unwilling to make basic commitments to not privatizing or defunding our public schools, confused about the need for federal protections for students with disabilities, and so committed to a right-wing agenda that she pointed to the need for guns in our schools to protect against, and I quote, potential grizzly bears? In response, by the way, to a question from a senator representing the Newtown families. Well, people across the country pay even more attention, and they start to make their voices heard. So, Madam President, I am not surprised that opposition to Betsy DeVos has caught fire across the country. And I am not surprised that people are talking about it to their friends and writing letters to the senators and showing up to protest when they've never done anything like that before. Because this is about their kids, their schools, their communities. It's about the core idea that we are a nation that invests in strong public education and one that strives to guarantee the promise and opportunity it affords to every student in our country. Not that public education is perfect. Of course not. We have a lot of work to do. But that work should be directed towards strengthening public schools, not tearing them down. And the belief that public education is something that should be valued as an important piece of the fabric of this nation and the expansion of our middle class, not scorned and ridiculed by billionaires who never had any use for it themselves. Madam President, I spent a lot of time Friday here laying out my case in detail opposing Betsy DeVos. I talked about the open questions that are remaining regarding her tangled finances and potential conflicts of interest. I ran through the strong concerns with her record, her lack of experience, and her lack of clear understanding of basic education issues. I discussed my strong belief that her vision for education in America is deeply at odds with where parents and students and families across our country want to go, and went through the process, how Republicans jammed this nominee through our committee, cutting corners and doing everything possible to protect her from scrutiny. So, Madam President, I won't go through all that again now, but I do want to make one more point, one that I hope will be compelling to my Republican friends who are still resisting pressure from their constituents and sticking with Betsy DeVos. And that is this: no matter what you think about Betsy DeVos's policy ideas, no matter what you think of her qualifications to run this agency, no matter what you think about her personal understanding of the issues or her financial entanglements, one thing is very clear. If she is confirmed, she would enter this job as the most controversial and embattled secretaries in the history of this department. She would start this job with no credibility inside the agency she is supposed to lead, with no influence in Congress, as the punchline in late-night comedy shows, and without the confidence of the American people. Madam President, a vote for Betsy DeVos is a vote for a Secretary of Education who is likely to succeed only in further dividing us on education issues, and who may try to take steps to implement her anti-student agenda, but would do so with people across the country and so many of us in the Senate on guard and ready to fight back. So I urge my Republican friends, and we just need one more, let's cut this off right now. Let's ask President Trump to send us someone who is qualified, who understands the issues, and who truly cares about public education. And together, let's stand with our constituents and say no to Betsy DeVos. Thank you, Madam President, and I yield the floor.
Madam President.
And technology. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Secretary of Education. As the senator from Washington has told us, the more the American people learn about the record of Betsy DeVos, the more concerned they become. The American people are making their voices heard in every Senate office. The switchboard has been essentially shut down, and I can tell you that I've received over 14,000 calls from Maryland on this nominee alone. People are calling because the more they look at the record, the more they realize this nominee's lack of commitment to the essential mission of the Department of Education. And that mission is to provide every child in America with access to a quality public education. This concern about the nominee is shared across political parties. As Senator Susan Collins of Maine said on this floor, Ms. DeVos's concentration on vouchers, quote, raises the question about whether she fully appreciates that the Secretary of Education's primary focus must be on helping states, communities, and parents, teachers and school board members and administrators to strengthen our public schools. Our mission must be to provide every child, regardless of zip code, with access to a high-quality neighborhood public school. It is absolutely true, Madam President, that in too many places around this country, we are failing to meet the goal. But the response to a troubled school should not be to walk away from it in favor of sketchy voucher schemes. Instead, we must work together to provide the necessary resources and interventions to help those schools and those students achieve success. Over the last 2 years, I've spent a lot of time traveling over the great state of Maryland. I visited schools, talked to college students, heard from parents. And no matter where I went, in every part of our state, everybody wanted the same thing: a good school, affordable college, either community college or four-year colleges, and a fair shot at reaching their dreams. The United States Department of Education is supposed to help them get that opportunity. Let me take a moment to talk about what the Department of Education means to some neighborhoods in my state of Maryland. Not long ago, I visited a pair of community schools in Baltimore City. The historic Samuel Coleridge Taylor Elementary School in Upton Druid Heights in West Baltimore, and the Benjamin Franklin High School in Brooklyn in South Baltimore. Upton Druid Heights is a historic African-American community in Baltimore. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, jazz great Cab Calloway, and civil rights pioneer Lily Mae Carroll Jackson all walked its streets. But today, it's a community in distress. Most of its children live in poverty. 95% of the students at Samuel Coleridge Taylor Elementary are on free or reduced lunch. Despite its challenges, it has a strong faith-based institutions and community groups. Ms. DeVos's approach to schools like Samuel Coleridge Taylor has been to give up on them, to abandon them, and divert resources to voucher programs. Fortunately, the Department of Education did not abandon this school. In 2012, it designated Upton Druid Heights as a promise neighborhood. The department provided resources to support comprehensive services for families. These include Be More for Healthy Babies, which has dramatically reduced infant mortality rates in the city, Parent University to help educate parents of young children, and Financial Literacy and Education to help filling out income tax reform forms and help families manage their budgets. In 2012, Samuel Coleridge Taylor became a community school. It has a community school coordinator, a position that can be filled using funds under Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which provides financial assistance to schools with high numbers of children from low-income families. The community school coordinator works with parents and students and educators and community residents to learn the needs of the neighborhood and form partnerships to meet them. The University of Maryland School of Social Work, which is located just down the road, joined them to provide trauma training so that teachers could recognize and respond to trauma among the children and go on home visits to work with families. They received a grant to build a first ever playground on campus, something that most schools take for granted. Local churches provided safe spaces for kids. The Weinberg Foundation donated a beautiful library. There's a job center where parents can look for employment, and a food bank to send kids home with something to eat over the weekend. The school was transformed into a place where kids want to be, receiving the Mayor's Award for the greatest drop in students at risk for chronic absenteeism. It's been a success story. In a little different part of town, Ben Franklin High School exists, and it's isolated geographically in the Brooklyn neighborhood. It's on a peninsula on the southern part of the city. It's a historic waterfront neighborhood with strong ties to manufacturing. The Brooklyn community built ships for the United States in World War II. Many families in Brooklyn have been there for generations. As manufacturing left and Bethlehem Steel closed, Bethlehem Steel, which provided about 12,000 good-paying manufacturing jobs, as it closed, times got tougher for those working families. In the year 2011, Benjamin Franklin was one of the bottom 5% schools in the state of Maryland. Again, one of those schools that this nominee would have walked away from in favor of vouchers. Again, the good news is the Department of Education did not walk away. It provided extra funding to help turn things around. Using the community schools model, they assessed and responded to the needs of the students. Interns for the University of Maryland School of Social Work provide mental health services. The United Way offers a workforce development program and an on-site early childhood development center that helps teen parents graduate knowing their children have quality care. A family stability program helps families avoid homelessness. CSX is working with the school to build a football field. And students work together with their neighbors to take ownership of their community and protest the placement of an incinerator near them because they figured that this low-income neighborhood was a good target to put an incinerator, but the community fought back and won. They put thousands of hours into community service, including Chesapeake Bay cleanup. The school's Office of Student Service Learning helps connect students to internships and job training programs. In Brooklyn, the crime rate and the teen pregnancy rates have dropped, and attendance at Ben Franklin is up. When I asked the students what they liked about the school, they said, "We feel like someone cares now." And everyone is positive. At both these schools, Samuel Coleridge Taylor and Ben Franklin, the principals told me that the community schools model allowed them to form partnerships to meet the needs of their students' lives so that they could focus on delivering a high-quality education. And because the students' needs are being met more comprehensively, the students can focus on learning. And because you have a team outside of the teachers who's helping provide some services to these kids, the teachers can focus on teaching. It's important for us to understand that every child who walks through the doors of a school has a unique family circumstance and their own individual needs. The community school approach emphasizes the fact that no school is an island into itself. Every school is part of a neighborhood, and we need to understand the special circumstances of the children and families in those neighborhoods. And it's not just for urban schools like Samuel Coleridge Taylor and Ben Franklin. Community schools have shown success in rural areas of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Montana, and across the country. Mr. President, this idea that every child should receive a good public education is as old as our republic itself.
National plans on education, health, and social welfare, rural is an overarching goal.
Tyranny. In a letter in 1786, Thomas Jefferson wrote, and I quote, "I think by far the most important bill in our whole code is that for the diffusion of knowledge among the people. No other sure foundation can be devised for the preservation of freedom and happiness." As early as 1779, Jefferson was putting forward legislation to create a public school system that would give children a fair start. Jefferson later wrote to John Adams, and I quote, "It was a bill for the more general diffusion of learning. This proposed to divide every county into wards of 5 or 6 miles square, like your townships, to establish in each ward a free school for reading, writing, and common arithmetic, to provide for the annual selection of the best subjects from these schools who might receive at the public expense a degree of higher education at the district school." And he went on to say, "Worth and genius would thus have been sought out from every condition of life and completely prepared by education for defeating the competition and birth for public trusts." Even though America did not start the public education system at that moment in time, those ideas and that philosophy of education as the great equalizer and tool to develop the talents of Americans regardless of the circumstances of their birth are the foundations of the public school system that we have today. Madam President, President Trump gave remarkably little attention to education during his campaign. He pretty much ignored the public school education system in favor of his $20 billion voucher scheme that would drain huge amounts of resources from neighborhood schools like the 2 in Baltimore that I just discussed. With the president offering only vague promises and pricey schemes, it's even more important that we have an education secretary with a steady hand and a deep understanding of the critical mission of the department. It's clear that Ms. Betsy DeVos is not the right person for the job. Ms. DeVos advocates a concept of industrialized, privatized, and for-profit schools.
Hello everyone, my name is Jen. I'm from Golden State Times. I am your host, and we would like to welcome every single one of you to our live stream. We've been noticing some people on the chat saying, what is this music? This is patriotic music from the United States of America. We play music from all branches of our armed services. So if you disrespect this music, you're disrespecting the United States of America, and you will be banned from this chat. So for everybody else that is enjoying the chat and listening to the music, and it'll start in just around 14 minutes. So we encourage you to share this stream and also give this video a thumbs up. If you are new to our community, we encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We stream all of the Trump administration events. We also, like you saw before, we also stream all of the Senate doings every single day, depending on what they're doing for that day. Most of the time, they go and debate at night, but it seems like recently they have been doing it during the day. So we will stream those things too. We also have original content, so make sure to check out the channel. Thank you very much, everyone. It will start, like I said, in just a few minutes. Hello, everyone, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I know the screen says 1:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but it can go a little bit over. So it's scheduled to start in 2 minutes, but I'm sure that it'll start in at least 5 to 10 minutes. That's always how it runs with these things. But we encourage you to be patient, and it'll start as soon as possible. But I wouldn't bet on starting in 2 minutes. Thank you very much for choosing us as your stream of choice. And we hope that you guys stay here with us. And we stream every single day, don't forget. So make sure to click that subscribe button. And yes, we do play Marine music. We play music from all branches of the United States Armed Services, including the Coast Guard, which you're probably hearing right now or probably over, but we play all of them, so thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for choosing us as your stream of choice. It should start momentarily. It was scheduled to start at 1:15, but it will start in just a few minutes, so don't go anywhere, folks. Listen to the music, have fun in the chat. We are trying very hard to get all of the trolls the hell out of here because this is a no troll zone. So we will ban all the trolls. The messages that you're seeing in blue, that is called super chat. So I guess it's a new thing by YouTube. And if you see somebody saying something stupid on super chat, we apologize. But as of right now, YouTube gives us no control. And for those that want to help out the channel, if you want to use super chat, that's a very good way. Thank you very much for those that have used super chat in the past here at our channel. It helps us keep operations open. And like I said, it will start in just a few minutes. Just an update. We will actually stream the French elections. We're big supporters of Le Pen. So if you want to watch that, we're going to stream that on our channel, Golden State Times International. If you guys want to see any international streams of things going on around the world, it will be on that channel, which is different than this channel. But I'll put a link of it in the description below. We will stream that live. If anybody would like to help out the channel, there's a few ways of doing it. There are links in the description below. Right now, we are selling a coffee mug. It's pretty awesome. A lot of people love it. The link is in the description. Also, our PayPal link's in the description. Or you can use Super Chat. There's just a few ways that you guys can help. Sharing the stream is the thing we care about the most. It helps the channel immensely, and it's free. So if you want to help out the channel, share our links in the description, or share it on social media. But just get the link of this stream out there for people to watch. Thank you very much. All right, folks. So President Trump is having lunch right now with people from the armed services. So until he's done with lunch and he's ready to come out and speak, he will. But he is spending more time with our American heroes of our armed services and giving them time for them to ask him questions and talk to him about certain issues. So Trump is set to speak whenever he is done with his lunch and his meeting with our heroes from our armed services.
Good afternoon to everyone. This is a terrific day and a very special occasion for all of us here at Macdill Air Force Base. The commands here at Macdill have been extraordinarily busy over the last 15 plus years. They've been engaged in multiple conflicts and responding to crises. On almost a daily basis in the most volatile and important regions of the world. Our mission is to protect America's interests and to keep our nation and its citizens safe. And the outstanding men and women, military, civilian, and contractors, have done and continue to do extraordinary work on behalf of our nation and in support of our partners and allies. We are very, very proud of all of you and, of course, of our families. As some of you may know, today is President Ronald Reagan's birthday. He was born February 6, 1911. In his words, and I quote, "We Americans don't want war, and we don't start fights. We don't maintain a strong military force to conquer or coerce others. The purpose of our military is simple and straightforward. We want to prevent war by deterring others from the aggression that causes war. If our efforts are successful, we will have peace and never be forced into battle. There will never be a need to fire a single shot." Ladies and gentlemen, that remains our focus today, and we are enormously grateful for the strong support we receive from our national leadership, starting right at the very top with our Commander-in-Chief. We are incredibly fortunate to have him here with us today. President Donald Trump has been in office for just over 2 weeks, 18 days to be exact. He wanted one of his very first trips to be here to Macdill Air Force Base to visit the commands and spend some time with our men and women in uniform. I cannot overstate this. This is a very big deal, and it is a real testament to how important you are to him. He holds our military in the highest regard, and we are enormously grateful for the President and the First Ladies, and indeed the entire First Family's strong support for our troops serving around the world and their families. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a very loud and warm reception for the 45th President of the United States and our Commander-in-Chief, President Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's so nice. A lot of spirit. Great spirit for this country. Thank you all. We have tremendous spirit, and I want to thank you. We had a wonderful election, didn't we? And I saw those numbers, and you like me, and I like you. That's the way it worked. I'm honored to be here today among so many of our really and truly great heroes. I want to begin by thanking General Votel and General Thomas for their distinguished leadership and service on behalf of our country. Very, very outstanding people. I'd also like to thank General Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's big stuff when you have the chairman. Where is it? Joe, stand up for a second. This is one of the great people. Thank you. Also, Commander Vogel and everyone serving at Macdill Air Force Base. Quite a place. And we're going to be loading it up with beautiful new planes and beautiful new equipment. You've been lacking a little equipment. We're going to load it up. You're going to get a lot of equipment. Believe me. So importantly also, let me thank all of the coalition partners and their representatives assembled here today. We proudly, very proudly, stand with you, and we will be fighting for your security. They're fighting for our security and freedom. Let me recognize our great governor and a very good friend of mine, and somebody who endorsed me. That makes him a better friend of mine. You know, if they don't endorse, believe me, if you're ever in this position, it's never quite the same, okay? You can talk, but it never means the same. But this man is a great, great governor and has done a fantastic job. Rick Scott, Governor, stand up, please. Thank you, Rick. Finally, on behalf of the entire nation, let me express our gratitude to all members, and I mean all members, of our military serving in the United States Central Command and the United States Special Operations Command. We salute the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, along with our civilian defense personnel who are so important to the success of what we're doing. Let me also recognize the military families and spouses who bravely shoulder the burdens of war. I want every military family in this country to know that our administration is at your service. We stand with you 100%. We will protect those who protect us, and we will never, ever let you down. As your president, I have no higher duty than to protect the American people. Highest duty we have. I said it the other night. Great Supreme Court nominee. You all saw that. But I said to myself, perhaps the only thing more important to me definitely is the defense of our nation. Supreme Court's so important, but we have to defend our nation. And we will do that, believe me. We will do that. And each and every one of you is central to that mission. The men and women serving in CENTCOM and SOCOM have poured out their hearts and souls for this country. They've really experienced things that very few people get to experience. You've shed your blood across the continents and the oceans. You've engaged the enemy on distant battlefields, toiled in the burning heat and bitter cold, and sacrificed everything so that we can remain safe and strong and free. Our administration will always honor our sacred bond to those who serve, and we will never, ever forget you. Believe me, we will never, ever forget you. We will ensure that the men and women of our military have the tools, equipment, resources, training, and supplies you need to get the job done. You've seen me say we've been depleted. Our Navy is at a point almost as low as World War I. It's a long time ago. It's a long time ago. It's not going to happen anymore, folks. It's not going to happen anymore. Not with me. But we will ensure no taxpayer dollars are wasted. I have already saved more than $700 million when I got involved in the negotiation on the F-35. You know about that. And I want to thank Lockheed Martin, and I want to thank Boeing, and I want to thank all of the companies that have really opened up. And when I say opened up, Rick Scott understands this very well, opened up and cut their prices, okay? Because that's what they did. And we've got that program. It's going to be back in really great shape from really being very troubled. And we are going to be taking care of our great veterans. We will make a historic financial investment in the armed forces of the United States and show the entire world that America stands with those who stand in defense of freedom. We have your back every hour, every day, now and always. That also means getting our allies to pay their fair share. It's been very unfair to us. We strongly support NATO. We only ask that all of the NATO members make their full and proper financial contributions to the NATO alliance, which many of them have not been doing. Many of them have not been even close, and they have to do that. Central Command and Central Operations Command are at the very center of our fight against radical Islamic terrorism. America stands in awe of your courage. Those serving at CENTCOM have bravely fought across the theater of war in the Middle East and bravely battled a vicious enemy that has no respect for human life. Today, we express our gratitude to everyone serving overseas, including all of our military personnel in Afghanistan. SOCOM has dispatched its legendary warriors to the most secret, sensitive, and daring missions in defense of the United States of America. No enemy stands a chance against our special forces. Not even a chance. They don't have a chance. And that's the way we're going to keep it. And you're going to be better off because you're going to have the finest equipment known to man. Going to be better off. The proof that our nation has been blessed by God, look no further than the men and women of the United States military. They are the greatest fighters and the greatest force of justice on the face of the earth and that the world has ever known. The challenges facing our nation, nevertheless, are very large, very, very large. We're up against an enemy that celebrates death and totally worships destruction. You've seen that. ISIS is on a campaign of genocide, committing atrocities across the world. Radical Islamic terrorists are determined to strike our homeland, as they did on 9/11, as they did from Boston to Orlando to San Bernardino. And all across Europe, you've seen what happened in Paris and Nice. All over Europe, it's happening. It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it. They have their reasons, and you understand that. So today we deliver a message in one very unified voice to these forces of death and destruction. America and its allies will defeat you. We will defeat them. We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, and we will not allow it to take root in our country. We're not going to allow it. You've been seeing what's been going on over the last few days. We need strong programs so that people that love us and want to love our country and will end up loving our country are allowed in, not people that want to destroy us and destroy our country. Thank you. Freedom, security, and justice will prevail. In his first State of the Union message, President George Washington wrote that to be prepared for war is one of the most effectual means of preserving peace. Almost 200 years later, as the general was also speaking about Ronald Reagan, he said that wisdom comes in three very, very strong words: peace through strength. I've said it many times during the campaign, speaking in front of tens of thousands of people at one sitting, and I'd always mention America first, a phrase that you probably never heard, make America great again. Anybody ever heard that? And peace through strength. The men and women of the United States military provide the strength to bring peace to our troubled times. We stand behind you. We support your mission. We love our country. We are loyal to our people. We respect our flag. We celebrate our traditions. We honor our heroes. You are our heroes. And we are prepared to fight, and we pray for peace. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, General.
Proud of all we have done, fighting till the
All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. We would like to thank the moderators that came out today to help out on the chat. Thank you very much for trying to keep the chat clean and enjoyable, which you guys did a very good job, so thank you for that. So this was President Trump as he speaks at the Coalition Representatives of Senior U.S. Commanders in Florida. After this, he is heading back to the White House to continue making America great again. Thank you very much, everyone, for choosing us as your stream of choice. Click that subscribe button if you're new to the community. If you just joined it, make sure to click the bell right next to it. In a few minutes, let me know on the chat. Press 1 if you guys want to continue watching the Senate hearing. It's just Democrats complaining the whole time. They are set to go on for hours and hours and hours. So let me know if you guys want to watch that. I'm going to shut this stream down, but I'm going to put up another stream in just a few minutes if you guys are willing to watch a bunch of Democrats cry for over 24 hours. Press 1 if you guys want to watch that. Thank you very much for joining us, like I said, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. But until then, peace.